In this video, I'm going to be showing you my entire workflow from starting with a reference image and creating a marimba in Blender, and then taking that marimba to create a layered 2D drawing that can be used to make a quilt. Like most projects, I start from a reference image, so I'm going to use this top-down view. In a new Blender scene, I'm going to delete everything, A to select all, X to delete, Shift A, image is plane, and import my reference plane. In solid shading, if you want to see the texture applied, to the drop-down menu and select texture. I'm going to model a reference cube just to keep it relatively at scale, and to bring up the item menu, I'm going to make this 6 feet by 2 feet by 36 inches tall. Search for shade wire, make it non-selectable, and then scale this so it's approximately the same size. I'm going to create the lower row of keys, shift right click, place the cursor there, add a new cube, SY to scale in the Y direction, SZ to scale in the Z direction, Control A to apply scale. I'm going to add an array modifier, slightly adjust the spacing, and then increase the count. Shift D, Y to duplicate, GZ to pull that slightly above, and then using the edge center, shift left click to enable that. I'm going to shift this half a key over, G to grab, B to identify a reference point, X to constrain it in the X direction, and then I'm going to select the midpoint, which is indicated by an orange triangle. I'm going to apply both of these modifiers, and then looking at the reference image, you can see that there's a gap after 2 keys and a gap after 3 keys that repeats. So to do that, I'm going to tab into edit mode, select one face of each of the keys that I want to delete, and then I'm going to use the command select linked all to select the entirety of that object. X to delete faces. So if you look at the reference image, you see that it tapers to one point. It's wider down here than it is up the top. In order to do that, I'm going to tab into edit mode, go to vertex selection, Shift Z to go into wireframe, and then I'm going to use the command shear. Y for the Y direction, and then I'm going to move my mouse so that it aligns with the angle of the bottom row of keys. Then I'm going to do the same thing up here, use the shear command, press Y, and then position it so it matches the top row. Delete these extra ones. So now I can just model that taper as the base. So I'm going to add a new plane. And I'm going to cut it short. I'm not going to make as long of a marimba as the reference image. GZ, position this underneath the first row, probably a little bit more so that there's a space to create sound. Tab into edit mode, A to select all, E to extrude downward. Since I extruded in a negative direction, if you check your face orientation, this is going to be negative. So tab into edit mode, A to select all, Shift N to recalculate normals. I'm going to borrow the edge of this, select this face, Shift D, right click to reset, P to bring up the separate menu, S to separate that selection, reset the origin to geometry, because you can see this is the origin point after I separated it, and then it'll recenter it if you use origin to geometry. Tab back into edit mode, A to select all, E to extrude. I'm just matching up in plan. Shift T to duplicate, GX, S to scale, Z in the Z direction. Another thing you'll notice about the reference image is that each of these keys is a rectangle. So the bottom edge of all these keys and the top edge of all these keys actually shouldn't be angled. It should be completely flat. To do that, tab into edit mode, select all these vertices, and under the transform pivot point, you can choose individual origins, and if you scale in the Y direction to 0, so that's SY0, you can flatten off each of those. So the same thing up here, grab all these, SY0, and it'll flatten off each of those keys. The next thing I'm going to do is model these tubes that are located below each of the keys. These are called resonators. So to do that, select my object, tab into edit mode, Shift S2 to place my 3D cursor centered about that selection, Shift A to add a new cylinder, S to scale down, GZ to position it below, tab into edit mode, GZ to stretch it down. Apply scale, Control AS, turns it all to 1. And then I'm going to do another array, adjust the offset, adjust the count. R to rotate so this stays centered about the midpoint, Shift D to duplicate, R to rotate. Apply both modifiers, delete the extra, select link all, X, delete. I'm going to join these into one object. So the curvature starts low at the bottom, goes up, comes back down. To achieve that, I'm going to bring in a Bezier curve, rotate it so that the curvature is in the XZ plane. You can mirror it, Control MX. I'm going to position this here, scale it up, and then I'm going to grab the handlebars to adjust the curvature. So starts at the bottom, goes up, comes back down. That's the curve I want to create. So to do that, I'm going to use a technique called knife project. So if I select my object, tab into edit mode, Control left click my cutting object, press 1 to go into front view, and search for knife project. Enable cut through, and then I can use the circle select tool. These little dots are the center of individual faces. And use the C circle select to select all of these faces. X to delete, F faces. And so now the curvature of these resonators follows the curvature of the line. Sometimes knife project is a little buggy, so I'm going to show you one more way. I'm going to take my curve, which is a curve, it's not a mesh. You can search or convert to mesh. Tab into edit mode, A to select all, E to extrude, Y to extrude in the Y direction, A to select all, E to extrude down in the Z direction, SZ0 to flatten off the bottom. And now I can use a Boolean operation. So right now, there's these, this is going to be the object that I'm cutting, and this is my cutting object. Search for Boolean, difference, and then select the object. I hide that, so that didn't work, but Booleans can also be buggy. So you can see it actually didn't do anything. If you enable fast instead of exact, I don't know why this is the case, but sometimes you'll get better results. And so it does the exact same thing. Actually, one difference between using Boolean and the knife project methods is the Boolean will treat this like it's a solid object. So you'll see that there's a bottom face to these tubes. Knife project will just cut through the tube and not have a face filled in there. But the overall shape is going to be the same. It still follows the line. The next thing I'm going to do is model a very simple base. It's just going to be rectangular extrusions. And that's going to be my base. So I'm going to do something similar over here. Shift D. Now this piece is wider, so I'm going to tab into edit mode and pull them down like this. GBY, GBY. Control J. So now my support pieces are all one piece. I guess I can make it all one piece. Control J, and now I have a single object that makes up the entire marimba. So right now there's no texture to the marimba. I did like the wood and the black colors of this one, so I'm going to import this into my scene and use that image to texture my model. Shift A, add an image, find my reference image. You can move it off to the side. I'm just using the image as a material. So I'm going to select my object, select my reference image so that it's active. Control L brings up the link transfer data menu, and I'm going to select link materials. So my plane has a material with the name being my texture name. And so now I've selected this material to apply here. I'm going to hide this. And now that I'm looking at this image, I forgot that there's like a cross brace down here. So I'm going to grab this, make it a little bit deeper. I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this. Right click, bridge faces. So now there's a little support down there. If I open up the UV editor and find my marimba image, if I try to match approximately the same perspective as the image, and tab into edit mode, I just select all, U to project. So the angle wasn't quite right. It doesn't really matter, but reproject it. And I'm looking to get somewhat close. So it's not perfect, but it's projected this image onto that mesh. Circle select to grab the frame. I'm going to use select link all, everything but the keys. A to select all in the UV editor, S to scale down to 0. And I'm just going to essentially sample 1 pixel to create a black material. And then for the inverse, adjust the keys, Control I. I'm going to open up my UV editor, go to individual origins and scale down to 0. So now each of these dots is the UV map of one of these keys. So you can see as I drag the series of orange dots, sampling different colors for the keys, which is kind of cool. Find a place that looks okay. These two are both black, so let's position them on a piece of wood. Now I have a colored marimba. After taking a look at this, I probably want to even off the bottom of all these resonator pipes in the same way that I straighten out the edges of the keys. So I use circle select to select all those in wireframe, individual origins, SZ0, flattens all those bottoms off. I just turned the overlays off there with Alt-Shift-Z just to take a look at it without the orange outline. So this is a nice looking colored marimba, but it doesn't actually produce any drawings similar to what my mom needed for her quilt. So in order to do that, I'm breaking this up into layers. There's going to be a black layer that is the structure and the base of the keyboard, or of the marimba. There's going to be the keys of the marimba, and there's going to be these gray resonators. So that's 3 different layers that you have to create a drawing for that you can print out. In order to do that, I'm going to separate this one object into those 3 objects. So I already have the bottom part of the resonators selected. Selecting all, I can select the rest of it. P to bring up the separate menu, S to separate the selection, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the keys. So again, circle select, I'm just going to select the center row of vertices, selecting all, E, S. And then I'm going to reset all the origins to the geometry. This is going to be one layer, this is another, and this is the 3rd layer. I need a camera, so I'm going to add a new camera, Shift A, camera. I'm going to rotate it RX 90 so that it's facing forward. 0 is going to go into the camera view, but I'm in the middle of the marimba right now. So I'm going to move it back here. I chose a view that was slightly angled down for this, so I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis and look down, and then position it vertically a little bit. So I'm just using G and X, Y, and Z in order to find a camera position that I like. So I'm going to do something like this. The marimba that my mom made actually just had 1 row of resonators. It did not have 2. So I'm going to just tab into edit mode and delete all of these ones. This will be the camera angle that I generate drawings in order to make templates for the quilt. Just to distinguish, this is black and this is gray. I'm going to select all of these objects and I'm going to move this pixel to white so that it looks like a different layer. And same thing for this, I'm probably just going to scale this all down to 0. So now I clearly see the 3 different layers that I'm going to be rendering. If you go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, there's an add-on called Render Freestyle SVG Exporter. SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. And if you're not familiar with vector artwork as opposed to rasterized artwork, it's a way of exporting like a line drawing of an object. So under Render Properties, this is going to be enabled when you turn on that add-on. Before I render any SVGs, I'm going to do a little housekeeping. I'm going to put these all in different collections. M brings up the Move to Collection menu. New collection, I'm going to call these resonators. M, new collection, call this the frame. M, all these keys. You can collapse this. If this ever gets to be too overwhelming, minus will collapse the drop-down menus. But now I can render these one at a time. Turn off the visibility. The 2 icons are hide in viewport and disable in renders. So if you turn both of these off, it'll be invisible in the scene as well as to the camera. If you turn one or the other off, right now I just turned the visibility off, it's still visible to the camera. And the opposite is true. You can have it visible in the scene, but not visible to the camera. Go to Output, and then find an area that you want to save these files. You can give a name to it, so I'm going to call this keys. I'm rendering an Eevee because that's quicker. Render image. When I go to that folder, this is the SVG file, and it shows a line drawing of just the keys. So I'm going to do the same thing, turn these off both to the visibility and the camera, do one for the frame, go to Output, change keys to frame, render image, and to go with that, I now have a line drawing of the frame. And the last one is the resonators. Go to Render Output, type resonators, render image. And there's my resonators. So now I have 3 line drawings that I can use to print out and use as templates to cut out a fabric. And I know they're going to be scaled all correctly because the camera was the same size. I'm going to open them up in Adobe Illustrator just to demonstrate that. So open with Adobe Illustrator. If you don't have an Adobe subscription, you can use something like Inkscape or another free vector program. Frame, open with Illustrator. Keys, open with Illustrator. So in Illustrator, I can take these, paste them on a new layer, take the resonators, paste them on a new layer. I'm using the Live Paint tool to just fill these in. And when I'm ready, I can just print these individual pages. These get pasted onto the fabric and then cut out and stitched on as templates. So that's how I went from a couple of reference images to a fully modeled marimba and ultimately created printable templates that my mom could use in her quilt design. One of my favorite things about Blender and learning it was realizing how versatile it can be. It's used for incredible artwork, animation, and VFX, which are all awesome and great. But, sometimes it's just useful to have a practical, powerful tool that can help bring a creative idea to life. If you're new to Blender, I'd love to hear why you're learning it. What do you hope to get out of it? What do you want to make? And if you're more experienced, I'm interested in hearing how you use it. Personally, I picked Blender up during COVID. It was a replacement for SketchUp and V-Ray, which I used regularly in my professional work. But once I saw how powerful it was and what Blender could do, I started using it for everything, from work projects to personal projects and everything in between. If you enjoyed this walkthrough and you're curious about more 3D modeling content, please feel free to like or leave a comment down below and check out other videos on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to my mom for always being a creative inspiration and for letting me help out on her quilt. And I'll see you in the next one.